Leadership isn't theory. It's pressure. Responsibility. Decisions that matter. This is the Real Leadership Brief. Conversations with leaders shaped by experience. Tested under pressure. And accountable for the outcome.
I'm Donald Dunn, and this is the Real Leadership Brief. Today, we're joined by a guest who has operated in the ultimate high-consequence environments. Brad Lehman is a retired U.S. Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel and F-35 test pilot who spent nearly 20 years perfecting leadership, preparation, and execution in the cockpit. After serving as the Director of Integrated Test Operations for the F-35 Joint Program Office, Brad traded the flight line for the startup world, founding SwingSesh, a premium fitness and play system that challenges parents to stop sitting on the sidelines. Brad brings a rare blend of military precision, engineering mindset, and real-world parenting to the table. We're diving into how to lead by example and build better systems for performance, family, and life. Brad, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity to come chat with you.
Yeah, I love discussing leadership because the one thing that I learned was leadership in the military is not the same as leadership in corporate America, and it's a massive adjustment because the missions are completely different, but the approach is still the same. So I love discussing with veterans as well and get their perspective from when they left the military and entered this challenging world. So I'm ready to dive in, man.
All right. Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right. So you lived in worlds where preparation and execution meant everything. When you look back, what leadership lessons from military aviation still shapes how you show up today?
Man, that's a loaded question. I love it. I think the biggest thing that aviation teaches you kind of from beginning to end is that you have a limited time to make a decision. And so it's in the moment, you have to be able to make that decision, but it's not based on the moment, right? Then you dissect it back and you're like, well, what leads you to being able to do that? And it's the preparation, it's the studying, it's the endless hours of briefing and preparing. And those are kind of the moments that define your either success or failure in those moments. And I think the bluntness that aviation brings, like there's engine fire. What are you going to do? And like the decision will be made for you, whether it's by time or by you, but it is going to happen shortly. And I think that is probably the biggest takeaway that aviation gives anyone is that sort of finite amount of data to a decision go.
Yeah, I think you're right, and that can go in a lot of different fields. I think the military, that's the whole purpose of why there's so much money spent on leadership courses, because that process is always made in a crunch. You're calculating data from what you've seen, what you've learned, what you think's coming, and then reacting to it and executing.
Absolutely.
And so it doesn't matter whether you're an infantry platoon or a pilot, just changes the data and the decision-making process. So,
yeah. And the amount of data that you need to make a decision, I think is, honestly, in today's day and age, probably one of the biggest pitfalls. And I've seen it in my later years, in the test community. But if you wait till you can make the perfect decision, you've probably lost the window where the perfect decision could have been made. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I've always really enjoyed about aviation is the finite timeline is there. You got to pick something and start going. And then from that, you can iterate faster when you start realizing that things aren't going your way than you could have just by waiting to attempt to make the perfect decision.
Yeah. a lot of people that never served in the military and spent the time that you or myself did, they don't really know that full level of consequence. Yeah. How is it that as a veteran and a military leader going into, say, your own company or even a corporate America position, how can we bring that type of leadership and present it in a way that, civilians are going to be able to be, one, understand it, and two, grasp a hold of it?
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember that kind of early on in the Marine Corps, everything can be boiled down to life and death, whether it's, a cook, getting everyone sick, and now, you're unable to complete your mission, all the way up to, the aircraft is not maintained and now we're unable to defend our position. So, everyone's job can be boiled down in that manner. And, I think the same applies in the civilian sector. It's not necessarily a life and death now, but it is for the betterment of the company, and that includes you as an employee, whether you're salary or hourly, it doesn't really matter. Your livelihood kind of depends on that.
Yeah,
and it's building that trust and that sort of universal want for success in that sense. And I think that's where a lot of companies fail. They struggle to rally the troops behind the cause, to really bring effective leadership to the table, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely it does, because I was that guy that had a hard time adjusting to that, right? The mission, no matter what, you didn't fail. And sometimes I forgot that the widgets we were making isn't going to be life or death. There will be a tomorrow, and we can fix the mistakes from today, and we can learn from those mistakes today to improve tomorrow. And those consequences in the military, sometimes you don't get that. And it's hard to carry that over and realize I can calm down a little bit and understand how to reach people and get them to learn. So
I had a really interesting experience as I transitioned to the test community. The test community is kind of a 50-50 blend, and sometimes heavier with civilians. So we have a lot of engineering folks, a lot of, very specific subject matter experts, subject matter expert in radar and flutter and, acoustic vibrations, like really, very specifically smart and educated people. You don't find those necessarily in the military everywhere. So obviously they are hired in, and now trying to make that blend of, we're doing something that is still kind of a life and death, in the sense of this program is going to live and die by our successes and failures. And it's not today's fight necessarily, but it's the next 5 years or the next 10 years and what we're bringing to the platform, or not bringing because we failed in that mission. But it doesn't have that same, I guess, the same calling, if you will, for the engineering community sometimes, not in the sense that they're not called to the job. That's not what I mean, but in the sense of when you join the Marine Corps or you join the Army or Air Force or whatever it is, you are signing up to be led. Like I am signing this, this dotted line saying that I would like to go and be a part of this organization. And I think in the the hire and fire world, that doesn't always exactly equate over. And so the people that you're trying to lead and inspire or manage, they are now motivated by a completely different series of complexities that are much more difficult to understand. And a simple, mission task brief, go do your job, may or may not be sufficient to have them work for you, especially, in the military. Every 3 years, we're going to rotate through from the civilian world. If they decide they don't like you, they can drag their feet for a few years, and there's a good likelihood that you're going to move on and they can start fresh with the next folks. So there's a balance like Congress. That you really have to maintain. What was that?
That sounds exactly like Congress. Don't like the president, we'll just wait.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't get me started there. We'll steer away from the politics.
Yeah, yeah. I like making jokes about it, but the truth is, I'm politically homeless, man. As long as it doesn't affect our troops, that's all I care about. You know,
Yeah.
I like
There's
I
just,
like to
there's,
see our guys get breaks.
yeah, there's so much going on with it right now that, and it's so polarized. Um, I really just want everybody to get back to being like where we can communicate together effectively. We can
Yeah,
learn lessons from each other. And, I can sit down with someone and learn and be open and receptive to learning, and then vice versa. We
yeah.
all have so much to learn, but right now it seems like there's so many folks that are closed off to learning something. And man, that's a tough pill to swallow across the country, unfortunately.
Yeah, and again, that falls right back into leadership. It falls, the same within a company that you either own or you managing, is the ability to communicate, understand the needs of the people that you're trying to lead, and at that same token, the benefits that you get back are crazy in abundance. It is hard to replace people, especially talented people.
This episode is brought to you by Barracks Media, where your online presence becomes a real asset. Barracks Media builds professional websites for podcasters, creators, authors, and small businesses who are ready to be taken seriously. Not templates, not cookie-cutter pages, real platforms built to grow with you. Whether you're launching a podcast, promoting a book, or building a brand, your website should work as hard as you do. We design sites that convert listeners into followers and followers into clients. Visit barracksmedia.com and turn your idea into a home on the web.
And if you can find the problems that they're having and solve those problems. I had a guest on here yesterday that the majority of his workforce enjoyed reading. So they started a book club, not during the workday, but after hours. It was employee sponsored, and they bought the books for them that they're going to talk about that month or whatever. And, that $20 or $40 a book that they bought for the 20 or 15 people that was in the club paid dividends, because when they came back to work, they remembered some of these things, not to mention the bond they started building and the interaction that they had away from the workplace changed,
Yeah.
So that was, to me, that was like a genius idea. I would have never thought of it.
That's really cool.
So let me ask you this. When you transitioned out of the military and you became looking into the entrepreneur world, what skill set did you think you were going to bring? And then what did reality tell you?
Wow. That's tough, because a couple reasons. One is we had the idea, we were of SwingSesh is a fitness playset company.
Yep.
It started from, my wife was pregnant with our daughter. We were living in the motorhome, and we were trying to decide how life was going to change. I was in test pilot, just started test pilot school at the time. And, we were kind of flashing forward to what our life was going to be like, with the baby, and, how things were going to go. And I was working 12-hour days at the time, just very busy. And that's pretty standard in the Marine Corps, and military in general, just to work long hours and, keep the mission first. And I was trying to think of like what time I could bring home so I could have more home time and maybe a higher quality of home life to be there for my wife and our new baby. And it dawned on me that the gym was like the first thing that you could move that home, no problem. Like, you can stay fit at home. And then I was trying to think of how I would do that, because if you're down in the barn working out by yourself, or, out in the garage working out by yourself, you're not really doing the family thing at that moment.
Right.
And it just kind of hit me like, oh man, like, what if there was a play set? And I was like, surely somebody's done this before. They've built a play set with, the ability to work out. So I thought I was just going to go buy a product that we would enjoy. And then turns out there wasn't anything in that area. And so we decided to kind of pursue it. And so we knew that we would like to have our own business, to have, I would say, the freedom that's associated with it, but you work harder. It's just for your own cause than you've ever worked before. I think I thought it would be easier in some ways and harder in other ways. And it kind of
Mhm.
flips. Like the areas that are very hard are actually not what I was expecting. And the areas that are easy are where I thought we would struggle a little bit more. Um, and it's the breadth and depth of what is entrepreneurship I didn't fully appreciate. And I think that's a fair statement for most people when they get
Yeah.
started as a founder of something. When you are trying to bring something to life, um, you don't understand it until you do it. It's kind of like learning other random things. You don't know it until you start doing it, and then you really get to learn it.
Yeah.
And then I'd be remiss if I didn't say how my wife and I are in this thing together, like 6 ways from Sunday, and her ability to lead me when necessary is like on point, and I could not have done this without that. Um, and I think the same goes for her. Like we happen to have a very lucky relationship in the sense where my strengths and her weaknesses align, and the same, her strengths and my weaknesses align in a way where we can cover down on not quite everything, but a lot of the things that we need to do to be successful in this business. So
Yeah.
um, I may have walked off of your question there, so I
Oh,
apologize if I did. But
no, you're fine because you are right. Leadership. You left the military, and one of the things that military leaders are known for is, one, being able to put others in front of themselves, and you did that exact same thing as a father, a husband leading a family. You wanted to be able to be present at those moments and be
yes,
part of that.
absolutely.
And you can't do that without leadership because you still have responsibilities. I mean, if you can quit your job and sit at the house, but that's not going to pay the bills and it's not going to keep food on the table. And that's not what a leader does. You took the exact opposite. You said, I'm going to still be able to provide. We're going to go down this endeavor that's going to bring happiness. It's going to bring togetherness, and it's still going to cover the bills and allow us to spend time together. So yeah, that's exactly what a leader does. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think we often, and it's easy for the podcast to boil it down to leadership and
Yeah.
not, in real life, you'd never have that moment of like, you never know when you're leading or when you're
Yeah.
following exactly. Like yes, there are moments where the meeting starts and you're like, okay, this is how we're gonna frame things and this is how we're gonna go. But that's not necessarily leadership. That is leadership by uh, being in the position at the moment. True leadership is understanding, how to influence when you need to, or how to follow when it's important to do exactly that. And I think a lot of folks make a mistake of assuming, like, by position, I must be leading, instead
Right.
of saying, by position, I should be actually keeping my mouth shut and letting this person who is very smart and very capable going with it, and then providing a rudder steer when necessary. And I think that's one of the big takeaways from the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps views, leadership as a kind of a support element to enable all of the other things that need to happen. So, as a leader, you don't necessarily need to be the guy out charging through. Certainly can be, but sometimes you need to be the element that is filling in whatever gaps are there. We
Yep.
liken it to a canoe with lots of holes in it. You got to plug all of those holes so that everybody else can keep rowing the boat.
Yep. Yeah, you're
And
right. That's perfect.
yeah, I feel like that's the true essence of good leadership, is knowing when it's your moment to go, and also knowing when you need to sit back and let someone else do their thing. And in civilian life, it applies, probably tenfold to that, because there's so many places, especially in entrepreneurship, where you are not going to have the expertise. You're going to have a good amount of knowledge, but maybe not the real pinpoint expertise that's needed. And you need to make sure that you don't unintentionally stifle someone because you want to lead, instead of allowing them to kind of run that show, if you will.
Yeah. So you're now out of the military. You're an entrepreneur. You're building play sets. What did this business look like when it first started? Because man, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's been a wild start. I didn't appreciate the complexities of manufacturing exactly.
Yeah.
I'm very, tool knowledgeable, process knowledgeable. I can do anything with my hands and fix it, make it, do it. But when it comes to empowering others to do that, that's a tough skill set. And I think my wife is sort of the same way. She's very capable, very smart, Harvard grad. So sometimes I'm hanging on the stabs here trying to keep up. But the way in which you have to release your kind of grasp and let other people pick that up, that can be pretty challenging, from going from kind of this very small start of making something and then turning it into a product per se. So we had some, I guess it all started with designing, right? We were doing the preliminary designs, just trying to figure it out. And at every juncture, there's a million no's and no one wants to help you. They're like, yeah, you want to build how many? And we're like, well, we just need one to make sure it's going to work. And they're like, yeah, call me when you want to make 10 million. And we're like,
Yeah.
This show is part of the Barracks Media Network, built by veterans, creators, and storytellers who believe stories change lives. Barracks Media produces podcasts, books, and digital content that amplify voices worth hearing. We help creators launch, grow, and monetize their message without losing their soul. If you've got a story in you, or a show in your head, go to barracksmedia.com and start building something that lasts.
oh, and now I'm definitely not going to call you. And so, you finally find somebody that can help you do one thing, and then, the other thing starts falling apart. We had so much trouble in the beginning trying to get consistent, high quality powder coaters. We just couldn't do it. And so we finally ended up starting another business that solved our powder coating challenges. And I'm lucky enough that my dad is also extremely capable. I roped him into that as well. So I was actually out on the Italian ship Cavour. We were doing the sea trials for the F-35. And my wife sends me an email saying, hey, the powder coating company that we were using just got bought out. And the company that bought them is basically taking all the oven space. And so they're not going to be able to do our stuff. And we had orders that we had to get done. And I was like, all right, well, call everybody around and just see if there's a way that we can get it done. And if we can't, when I get off the ship in 2 weeks, we will start powder coating at the house. And she's like, what are you talking about? Powder? What? What? And I was like, yeah, I'll figure it out. You tell me if we can or can't do it. And then, I'll make it happen. And of course I came off the boat and she's like, nobody was ready to pick us up in a timely fashion. And I was like, okay, I'm building an oven this weekend. So I ordered the steel, designed it, laid it out, bought the burners, got the oven going. We got a Connex box, did all of our, wired up the barn for 3-phase, got a compressor, sandblasting material, sandblasting equipment. And inside of another 2 weeks, we were up and running, and we had built the pallets and sandblasted, coated the next series of sets. It was wild and fun and very, very rewarding. But I think that was the turning point for, it's so much easier when you can control it to get where you need to be.
Yeah. I'm smiling because I talk about in a few of my books that I wrote about how some of the reasons why veterans are so hard to help, when they're having mental issues, is because when you're standing there watching them dig this hole, you say, hey, are you done digging yet? Are you ready for some help? And they just look up and say, yeah, right. I can go deeper. Watch. And they just keep digging. You did that exact same thing in a positive situation. It wasn't, well, I guess we're just out of business mentality to take over. It was that veteran, okay, let's adapt, overcome, and accomplish the mission. And you did exactly that on the good side. So kudos to you and your family, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll be honest, that is a fear that I actually have, right? Because I am not one to say no to a challenge.
Yeah.
And so as an entrepreneur, it's not just your risk now. And I think that's something that as kind of a veteran, and probably most veterans are going to have that to some degree, especially ones that are, silly enough to go after entrepreneurship in a sense. You don't have a perfectly operating off switch, and that needs to be balanced with real life, real world risk. You're at first it was really easy. We kind of chuckled about it that this was going to be an equivalent of an MBA, right? You could go to business school and pay 50 grand, for my wife to go or me to go to business school and learn, or we can pay the school of hard knocks and just do this. But then as the business starts to accelerate and, growth takes over, one of the things I joked about was, at the beginning inside of 5 years, you're only spending, 30, 50, 90, 100 grand, and it's, slowly creeping up. Then you hit a certain break point and those numbers start creeping up quickly. And you're like, okay, well now my salary, we'd burn my salary in a half a year. And then you get to a point where you're like, I'm going to burn my salary in a month. So man, things better be going really smoothly now. We got payroll, we got people kind of waiting on us, depending on us. And so the broken off switch is a phenomenal thing in the right direction, but you need really good people around you to help assess that risk. And they need to be, understand your weaknesses and understand your strengths. And then vice versa, you need to understand them, to ensure they are a good fit mentor for you. I can't say that enough, because, there are so many people out there. They're going to be like, wow, that's a really bad idea. And then all of a sudden it'll flip and they'll be like, wow, nobody's thought of that. I can't believe nobody's been doing that this whole time. You're like, yes. And it takes a while, but you really do. You want to make sure that the people along the way they're not yes men or yes women, but they are highly competent, capable individuals of guiding you in the right direction so that you're not being too silly.
Yeah, no, you couldn't have said that better, because you are right. And that is, we just gave two examples of that veteran characteristic that we're just talking about in a positive and a negative way. And if you're not careful, until you get to the end result, you may not know which side of that knife you're on, Well,
right. Nobody pulls people on podcasts and it's like, hey bro, you're kind of an ultimate failure. Why don't you tell us about what you could have done better? Right. It doesn't work that way. But there are those cases, and they exist, and we know they exist. So, starting a business, especially like the restaurant industry, is like, it's like a 90% failure rate. And so you have to assess that with a real, I won't say you don't want to be overly cautious. If you have a great idea, you need to pursue it and pursue it passionately. But you just, along the way, you really do need to take some time and say, are we moving in the right direction? Can we balance out this risk and make sure you're living inside of a truth and real world, not just a bubble that you've unintentionally created? Like you said, the hole you've dug. And of course you can dig deeper. But at some point you want to see the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I can relate to that, because when I got out of the military, I just wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I don't honestly think I even knew what that word meant. It was more like the buzzword, and I wanted to be able to work for myself and not have people tell me what to do. And I had all these fantasy land, Disneyland type ideas that, wasn't reality. But I did pursue it. When I got out, circumstances decided, look, you picked a great place to retire. It's just a shitty place to find a job. So what are you going to do? I did the exact same thing. I bought a truck and I entered the trucking company, transportation world. And I didn't know crap about business, but now I've got the stars over my eyes. I'm an entrepreneur. I got this title, and, I just thinking back, listening to you talk, the roller coaster ride that I took, man, life was doing great. I bought the right truck to start out with. And then I made great money And I said, well, I think I need a bigger truck. I think I need to be able to go to California. And I didn't do the proper research. And next thing I know, I spent $160,000 on a truck that had 50 miles on it. Beautiful truck, but now that same consequence of me thinking I'm going to be able to manage 2 trucks and have other people driving and not doing the right work led to problems, and then COVID said, here's a real problem that you didn't see coming, buddy.
Oh, and,
so yeah, if you don't manage risk, it can engulf you really, really quick.
And I think even the greatest managers, like nobody has that in their, the global pandemics box of bingo, right? Like where was that square hiding? Nobody's going to see that coming. So, but you look back and there are great companies that nobody thought would ever go away, from our childhood, and they're gone, like not just a little bit gone. They're like wiped off the face of the earth from $1 billion company to completely non-existent. And
Blockbuster.
Blockbuster, AOL, Kodak. Like I know some of them have like, places that, they kind of still hang their hat, but they're not the empires that they once were. Sears, any mall, put that, right. And you just really start looking at that, and that can happen at any point along the way. And I think, you can't avoid a full risk, escaping all risk exposure. But you can do the best with what you've got and make sure that the decisions that you're making are moving you about in a positive manner and protecting you from some of the downside of what could be there. So you're not going to beat a global pandemic. It's just you can survive it maybe, but you're certainly you're not going to beat it most likely.
Yeah. And this is a good segue into the next topic that I want to talk about. So, we've talked about risk. How does the lessons of risk and everything that you've learned now, how are you applying that, looking at your current company and looking forward? Where do you see your company going, or where would you like to see it going? And how would you use the risk lessons you've learned now to implement that? Yeah.
I mean, so we have done it all along the way. So it's kind of like, I would say, baked in to some degree. We don't have like a formal, risk plan like you would find in aviation or some of the more very serious, high risk where there's lots of moving parts and people, and aircraft always comes to mind just because, there's so many people working on it. There's so many things going on. You have to be very careful with how all of it comes back together to ensure that you're successful. But you are managing, competition, you're managing your own capital expenditures, how big, how quick that you want to get big. You have to, manage all that. Do you take on an investor, or do you bootstrap it completely? And so at every opportunity, we do a risk analysis and we say, how is this going to impact us? Don't just look at the first order effects. You have to look at the second and third order effects of that. So, if you looked at first order only, you'd be like, hey, we have an investor, we have all this extra capital, it's going to be amazing. Press. But the reality is that there's a second order effect of that. Okay, well, now it's somebody else's money. They have interest, maybe not controlling interest, but maybe enough interest that it's going to change the way that you make decisions now. How is that going to change the way that you interact, or maybe the nimbleness of the company? Now you have to drag decisions along when you really needed to move quickly to be in front of something. So with everything, there is a consequence, and you just need to kind of play the mental chess game to say, there's enough reward to make it worth that, those issues or potential issues. And I had an interesting conversation with my dad along the way. My dad said, hey, if you ever need any capital along the way, just let me know. I'd be happy to help you guys. I know this is not an easy process, and it's, I'm sure it is very stressful. And I'd been talking to him about, where we were at with the business and finances and stuff. And it wasn't that I didn't want him as an investor. It was, I wanted him, he was helping with the powder coating business, and I wanted him to make the right decision. And my fear is, I am really good. That's one of the things I'm really good at, is kind of shouldering that burden and still making what I feel like is a good decision.
Yeah.
With, I can bifurcate the stress from the decision-making process for the most part. Not perfect, don't get me wrong, but that is something that I feel like I am halfway good at. And what I didn't want is him to make a different decision now because he was trying to protect, the investment, his investment, and now our collective investment. If he needed to burn money, I wanted him to come tell me, like, I need to burn money. This would make this better. And here's why. And I think that freed him to do that and just say what he wanted to say instead of feeling a little bit guarded by it or not. Yeah. And it's wild from an investor standpoint. You think about, who would you have, I would love to make all my friends rich, but at the same time, what no one understands is that I'm equally as likely to make you very poor.
Yeah.
So I don't 100% know where this is going and how it's going to go yet. And I think all small business owners are always on the verge of making it and not making it, at any given point in time. And it's not because your business isn't successful. It's just because it's the next growth phase that you're moving into, as you continue to get, you continue to get larger. And what you don't want to do is accept capital where you now feel that burden and you're unable to execute. So of course you're going to go after somebody who's got a whole lot of money and this is a drip in the bucket and it wouldn't affect them, rather than, friends and family, maybe where it might affect them a lot more, even though you want to, be the one that helps them out as much as you can. So it's a interesting process.
Yeah. And again, we talk about thinking down the road, not that that particular situation with taking on a partner with your family member could have done it. But, when you start thinking about, if only I had an investor to help share some of this burden of the finances, and then you take those investors on and you kind of liquidate yourself down. Well, that later, when you may need a bigger merger, a bigger company, now your sales are coming in, but how much equity do you really have to give away seeking later rounds of investment, and those are things that people don't think about. What is good today may have been better to wait for tomorrow, down the road. So,
yeah.
And it's awesome.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'd say that's awesome the way you were looking at it as well.
Yeah, it's a long-term math game that you're playing. If I take a little bit now and I run it and I double it and I double it and I double it and I double it. Well, where are you? It's such a simple thing, but it's so hard to get your mind wrapped around. If you double the dollar for 30 days, if I did my mental math right the other day, you're at $10 million. And it's like, that is wild when you really stop and think about the doubling effect of what you're doing. And from a small business perspective, you can do some big numbers like that. If you're careful as you start your growth cycles, but you have to really keep that long-term, how that growth works. Maybe it would have been better to just grow at 25% year over year over year over year. And then paying yourself a really good salary along the way. Or maybe you have the retirement to sit on and you're not going to pay anything. We're going to bootstrap this thing and roll. And then in 5 years, we're going to have it to a point where we can take a huge salary out. It's, to each his own, but you really need to sit down and play that math game as you go forward, because that's really going to help you go after the right people. It'll help you, go after the right equipment, go after the right processes to, set yourself up for success.
Yeah. No, you are absolutely right, Brad. Hey, can you tell everybody where is it that they can find more about your products, your business, and get that amazing locally done swing set and play set in their yard?
Yeah, we're SwingSesh.com. And everything that you need to know, you can find out there. If you're interested in the product, if you just want to follow us, follow our journey, we're at Team SwingSesh on Instagram. So you'll find pictures of us using it and little clips and reels of our family as we're making it happen in the backyard.
All right. Yeah. I hope all of you guys out there take the moment, go over there and look now that you know a little bit of behind the history and excuse me. And then make sure that you do the right thing and hit purchase and get yourself a swing set. And then while you're enjoying it, watching the kids, you can say, I also seen Brad on the Leadership Brief, and I know all about that company. So I hope all of you guys enjoyed it. I know I do. Y'all take care, be safe, and we'll see y'all next time.
You've been listening to The Real Leadership Brief, a podcast from the Barracks Media Network. Thanks to our guests for sharing their experience, and thank you for listening. You can find more conversations like this across the Barracks Media Network. We'll see you next time.